radical welcome, and we spent a couple weeks, actually maybe 3 weeks, talking about some of the concepts of that book. And then we're looking at how we can be better neighbors, thinking of.
So you're going to have to. You have to completely stop your microphone. Yeah, but I'll show you. I'm not. So you have to turn off your microphone.
Pardon me? Oh yeah, right, exactly.
Pay good money for that effect.
But I thought of it last week when
Going out.
Distracting.
It's distracting. Yeah. During godly play.
Just think of yourself speaking at the Vatican.
Okay. Let's see. It got you know what happened? It got logged into my phone. I need to leave the meeting. Somehow that's what happened. No, it's me.
No, it was actually Nancy, because you also got logged in, but Nancy, it was doing it before you got logged in.
Okay. So
now when it says join with audio, click no, and then it'll say, basically you have to click you X out and then continue.
Join with computer audio.
If there's no option, just X out.
Yeah. Oh, just X out. That one. There.
Yeah.
And then it'll want you to say, it'll basically say, are you really sure? And you'll say continue, and it'll go.
Yay! Thank you, Laura.
Okay, thank you.
Now we don't have the ghosty sound.
So now I'll continue and just say that last week during Godly Play, we saw the commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And that's really what this series is all about, is how do we love God and love our neighbors. And then, so we want to look at who are our neighbors. Yeah. And so, we've been hearing from a series of people. We've heard about interfaith friendships. Last week we heard from Wes about being gay in Glen Ellen. We have some coming up. Rabbi Bob is going to be talking to us about being Jewish in Glen Ellen. And today I'm really thrilled to be able to introduce Nancy Payne, who's a friend and former colleague at College of DuPage, who has lived in Glen Ellen for how many years? Since 1989. Yeah. And has raised 3 children here, and is going to be talking about her experience as being a person of color in Glen Ellen. And so I don't know if it would help you if we just kind of went around and introduced ourselves, or do you? Oh, that sounds great. Okay, and for the people on Zoom and so forth, would it be helpful for Nancy not to wear her mask, even if the rest of us do? Is that okay with everybody?
I think so, because then we can better.
Yeah, I think that will be helpful, and if we see you again, we'll know what you look like, right? Because the mask is on.
So, just something. So when you're ready to do your slides, we'll do that. Why don't we close that out right now, and then you can see the people on Zoom, and that way they can introduce themselves too. But why don't we go around who's here in the room, and then we'll do the people on Zoom. How's that sound?
Okay, sure. Well, why don't we start with Richard?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Richard. Nancy, glad you're here. I've been here, I mentioned, 3-4 months. It's a lovely community.
Kevin.
Actually. Judy? Okay.
Joyce, my old sweet mate.
Yeah. We were just reminiscing about which baby was born when we were sweet mates.
That's right.
We think it was Andrew. Right?
No, it was Garrett.
Garrett. Okay.
I'm Edna. I moved here from Baltimore in 1980, in 2008.
Okay. I'm Lois, and I live in Wheaton. I'm Cecilia. I'm George's wife.
I'm George, I'm Cecilia's husband, but I'm the rector of the church, and I've been here since 2006. And we serve together in one community, which is a wonderful joint work we share. And let's see, so who is on Zoom? We've got, so let's see, Carolyn? Do you want to unmute yourself? Say hello?
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, Carolyn, from Wheaton.
We've got an echo from you. Eric, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, I'm Eric Bergman. I'm Edna Hetherington's son, and I'm here with her granddaughters that are twins. And they got exposed to a classmate this week who has COVID, so we're waiting for them to get a negative test before we go out and about again.
We have Laura Waterman, who's
Hello.
she's our Zoom host, and among many hats that she wears. And then Kim Reed, I see your name there.
Hello,
Hey.
Kim Reed with John and Norma Hesterman, my parents, and from Florida. And hello, everyone. And Nancy, so glad you're there.
Good to see you.
Hi, Norma. Hi, John.
Hi,
Great to
John.
see you.
Hi.
And then we have Joyce's iPhone. Is that?
I know, and I don't understand. I thought I left the meeting, and I can't find it here, but I still.
Are you wanting to reintroduce yourself? You can.
Yeah, the Zoom me is up there, but.
It might be somebody else. That's why I let him in, because it could be. We have other Joyces, although you are the Joyce.
I'm happy to be just anyone.
Is it? Do we know? Is Joyce's iPhone? Can you say who you are if you're there? Can you hear us?
It's probably Joyce Fletcher, but
Probably is, but when I go to Zoom, it just says join a meeting.
Try to give her the best.
I don't know.
I don't know.
And there may be others who come, Nancy. So we'll call them out and we can say their name if they come in.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, and co-host is just me on the other computer. Sorry, guys.
Oh. Share my screen with you guys. Okay, so
Can you do the PowerPoint like the slideshow? Can you
I
say, say slideshow
God,
from beginning?
Let me see here.
That'll help the. I think if you go to this one, the slideshow there, that tab, and then then play from start.
Well, if I do that, does it then?
I don't think it'll automatically know.
Does it? Okay,
I don't
good.
think so.
Unless you put a timer on
I
it.
think
No, I don't wanna do
I
that.
think it'll advance as you hit
This
the.
is Josh O'Shea, who just walked in.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so in speaking with Joyce, this is the name of this your series is Where is the Love, and getting to know your neighbors in Glen Ellen. And my presentation is really my family growth in Glen Ellen. Most of the time that I've been in Glen Ellen, I've been raising my family. So yeah, it is about growing my family here in Glen Ellen. I have 3 children. They are Andrew's 30, Garrett's 28, and Lauren's 26. So we're empty nesters. And so this is, now we're on a new journey in our life. But yeah, that the whole raising children here, I think, encompasses most of what we did here in Glen Ellen, most of my life here. So this is about my experiences. I put here that the contents are anecdotal, except where noted. So it doesn't mean, that this is what everyone does. this does not mean that this is common practice. This means this is what happened to me, and this is what I did. So there may be some scientific proof to the contrary. So, someone may say, you know what, I'm actually in education, early childhood education, and that's not what the latest papers are saying. That's what happened to me. So, being open and honest. My family moved to Glen Ellen in 1989. We lived in the Maryhill subdivision. Oh, loved it. That was a great place to raise a family. Very young community. We moved in 2006. It was definitely an outgrown situation where our family just outgrew that house. And what I think is telling is that when we moved in 2006, we moved to another home in Glen Ellen and in the same school district. So there is some, happiness with being in Glen Ellen. So I didn't want it to sound, I didn't want to come off in a presentation like, oh, all these bad things are happening in Glen Ellen. When I put this together, I thought something must be right. Something must be right because I stayed in the same school district, and we actually made, I'll say, an effort to find a home in our same school district to keep our kids there. So, as I said, something must be right. So I think I wanted to go back to when we bought our first house. How did we end up in Glen Ellen? And we had certain criteria. And if you know, my husband and me, we are very much kind of I'd say the structured thinking type of people. Go into criteria. Let's get so some of the main things we thought about, and we said were important. Community, and community was the one that was important for me. And so we had a lot of friends that were moving to larger suburbs, like Naperville, for example. Naperville was a great place to live, but I wanted someplace that was, I'd say, smaller and more where I can feel like I was part of a broader community of people. Of course, the home offerings and values. At one time, we were looking, I'd say, southeast, and at that time, in 1989, the housing prices were okay. So we thought, that's not a value for what you're getting here in some of this. The big one was strong schools. We spent a lot of time researching schools and looking at, what was in the schools, all kinds of stuff. And then a diverse community. We wanted a diverse community and a diverse school. So this took a long time. It was a long search. It was over a year. And the best match turned out to be Glen Ellen. And the one sticking point was a lack of diversity, especially in 1989. We looked at the schools, and not a lot of folks of color in the schools. And in our neighborhood, not a lot of folks of color in the neighborhood either. So what we thought was our challenge is, can we build the cultural awareness for our children in a community that has a low diversity? So how can we get our children, have our children understand who they were, and understand their culture when our culture isn't the dominant part of what they see every day? We knew for a number of reasons. I've listed here, why is it important for your children to know who they are and to have cultural awareness and social identity? Well, self-esteem. You need to know that the great stuff about who you are, that it's not another culture that is better. It's better than that. Identity, pride in who you are. And knowledge of yourself and your history. And I find that a lot, even in that we as Blacks or African Americans, I use both terms, find ourselves having to, or making sure that our children are aware of their history. because it's really not taught, dominantly in school. So you are the ones that are teaching your children your history. Knowledge of others. So not only do you have to understand your history, you need to understand the history of other people so that you can interact with them effectively and know how to treat them, how they would probably treat you. Confidence, and then I have leadership here. And I put leadership because I thought, have you ever asked someone to be a leader that wasn't a genuine person, that didn't know who they were? So you want someone to lead a project. So I want Nancy to lead that project because she's always pretending to be someone else. No, you don't want me to lead something because I'm always pretending to be someone else. You want me to lead because I am my authentic self, and I bring that in my leadership ability. So we thought, can we do this? Can we build this cultural awareness from our home? And we thought that we could do this. We thought, yes, we can do this in our family, our home. My family, I grew up in Broadview. And I don't know if you're familiar with Broadview, it's right by Maywood. Went to Providence East High School. My family lived in that community for 50 years. So maybe that's why that sense of community is so important. Most of the people that I'm on Facebook with are people from my own community, from Broadview. I've shared with you guys that I'm on the board for Maywood Fine Arts. That is part of my old community. The community is really important. I'll tell you another thing. I still have my very first friend from my old community. Grew up down the street from me. We've been friends since we were 4 years old. Wow, that doesn't happen often. My oldest and dearest friend. My husband, Bill, grew up on the south side of Chicago. So we have that, rich heritage there. Bill's family also owned property in a town in Michigan that was historically a black lake. So everyone that's on that lake is African American, so historically it is. And we would go up there numerous times every summer. His mother had a home, and we took over his grandmother's home right next door. So that was also a rich source of cultural awareness for our children. Our friends, again, most of my friends, it's been actually someone one time that said, so who are her friends? I'm not kidding. I heard them. So who are her friends? Most of my friends that I'll say are, and I'll define friends, but most of my friends are people that I grew up with. So I have old friends, people that I went to college with. I do have friends in Glen Ellen, Yeah. I have friends in Glen Ellen, but I'll say the bulk of my friendships are very old friendships. And then also church and community organizations, and I'll talk about those later too, and they're important in the Black community, especially here. One of the things about Black families in the western suburbs is that they're spread throughout the area. It's not, there are very few places in the western suburbs where you have old Black communities that are established. I learned that in Wheaton, for example, there is one. So right by the train track, Black people moved in there to work that train area. And now, as I go through there, you still do have some, you still do have that historical part of where, Black families moved in, but it's being integrated too. So there is not, it's being integrated. So yes, that's it. If you go further east, LaGrange has one too. I lived in LaGrange area for a while. So they have an old Black part of the community. So, so there is an importance for us to have a means or a method to gather and to get together, because we're all so spread out. So if you're trying to build culture that way, you need to do that. So as I'm going through and I'm thinking about meeting, gathering, Black friends, I thought, well, how many Black friends do I have that live in Glen Ellen? And I actually figured out that I have two. Thinking, wow, wait, there aren't many of us here. Two Black friends that live in Glen Ellen. So, when I put this together, as I thought about friends, I thought, well, who do I know that I may call if I need something, or I get together with socially, or if I'm thinking about Black families, it's just these two. There just are not a lot of Black families in Glen Ellen. So it does make it important for us again to have these places together. And church is one. And one of the things that I did, we joined as our kids were. I joined a historically African American church, and I thought that was so important for my children. And I've given a number of reasons why I thought it was important. This was not the denomination that I grew up. I actually grew up Lutheran, and I don't belong to a Lutheran church now, but that was my the Catholic to Lutheran. I thought it was important for my children to see a successfully operated Black-owned organization, and to see, how this operation was run, and how every part of it was someone that they could look up to, that was a Black man, especially, and then Black women, and it was family oriented. I also like that that church gave them an opportunity to see families and different types of Black families. So for me, because I grew up in a community that's probably considered lower middle income now, I like for my children to be involved with not only other Black children, but children that have different socioeconomic statuses. I don't want them to think that, I did not want them to think that every child was wealthy, and to understand what it's like to grow up in a single family household, a household where money could be a concern. I thought it was important for them to see all of that. Other ways that we gather in the community is through organizations. I wouldn't say lots, but there are a number of key organizations where Black people get together. Sororities and fraternities is one. I would say what's different between historically Black sororities and fraternities and white sororities and fraternities is that with our organization, it's considered a lifetime commitment. When you join a sorority, a historically Black sorority fraternity, you say that I am a member of this organization. I noticed when I was, in college and afterwards, people that joined historically white organizations would say, I used to be, I was. So there's a big difference. The reason that you had this lifetime commitment is because those college-educated people would then come back to the community and work. So you are still gathering and meeting after college, and you're still doing the work, the public service and community work in communities, especially those that are, low-income areas and all that. That's what's happening with what we call graduate chapter sororities and fraternities, work in the community. Another way that I wanted to get my kids, and something that's important to me, is sport. And I thought, man, getting my kids involved in athletic teams and clubs would be a good way. Again, you're meeting with all different types of kids. Right? When you're on an athletic team, my kids had friends that, maybe their family was, lived in an apartment, or so all of those things I thought were important for my kids to see. And for them to choose friends based on who the person was. Yeah, Marla? Okay, so, here, raising my family, so the early years I have here from 0 to 2, it is a controlled environment. It is controlled. You are controlling everything that your kid does during that 0 to 2. We had in-home daycare, and the person that did the in-home daycare was a Black family, and her husband was a minister at the church that was in that historically Black part of Wheaton, right? Our network, friends, family, that whole social network. So our kids were in there. But once our kids got to 3 to 5, the world starts to open up, right? The world starts to open up, and they're becoming involved in other things in Glen Ellen. My kids went to preschool at College of DuPage. They started taking Park District classes, and the big one here I have is health track. I know you're thinking health track, but I just health track is a big one. There are a lot of things that happen to me at health track, right? A lot of things. I learned some things at health track. To me, there were a couple of things that I'll say were an indoctrination there. And the first one here, I know, what is a play date? I didn't have a clue what a play date was until I went to health track. We would get together, families, hey, what are you doing? Hey, okay, yeah, we're on our way, you know? What are you doing today? Okay, let's get together. Kids, you knock on someone's door. My friend that was 4 years old, I would just walk down to her house. Hey, can Robbie come out to play? I mean, that was it. There were no play dates. So my son goes to health track, and while he's in the children's activity center, he becomes friendly with his kids. And, you know, I'm talking with the mother, and she said, oh, we should schedule a play date. She said, but, you know, I don't have his calendar here. I'm like, the kid has a calendar? You know, I mean, it was, I had no idea. And then she said, well, you know, he has a play date with this kid on this date. I said, so they can't play with more than one kid at one time? Yeah. I had no, you guys are like, yeah. No idea. No idea. It was a knock on the door, the kids were in the backyard, let's go and play. I got my bike out, let's go. I had no idea that there was a formal process. Young kids seeing each other, and that there was someone's job to maintain the kids' social life. Unbelievable.
It's color coded too.
Oh,
I'm not kidding. Not all of us have lived that way.
I didn't want to that way.
But we believe you.
It was a whole different take on life than I had seen growing up in the Broadview neighborhood. The other one that happened at Health Track is my black hair story. And I'll tell you, I think we always believe that there's always this curiosity with white people about philosophy. You know, so if I have my hair, how did you do that? You know, what did you know, I had my hair braided. Does everyone know how to do that? Yeah, does everyone know how to do it? My mom taught me how to do it. So I'll just say, I have natural hair, which means I don't chemically relax it. I don't put something in my hair to straighten it. Well, what happened with this story, and I think there's some divine intervention in it. Actually, there's divine intervention in it. I had my daughter once again in health track with swim lesson. And knowing that there's always this thing of black hair, after her swim lessons, I give her the shower, I take her home, then I wash her hair there, and then comb it out at home. And I'm talking to one of my friends, and I said, I've got this whole thing, doing my hair at home, after the swim lesson, I take her on top. She said, why are you putting yourself through all of that? She said, just comb my girl's hair at health track. Wash her hair and comb it at health track. I said, well, I'm going to do that. So I washed her hair, and I'm sitting on the bench at health track, and I'm combing my daughter's hair, and of course, people are walking past me, and people are looking, but they don't want to look. They're like, What is she doing? The hair, you know? So, and then there were people that just kind of stared a little bit, then they went on. But there was one woman, a Japanese woman, she sits down and she's trying to make it fit. She sits down on the bench next to me and she says, "Do you mind if I just sit here and watch you comb your daughter's hair?" And I said, "No, hey, that's fine." She said, "You know, I just adopted a little African-American girl, and I don't know how to comb her hair." And I went through, I showed her how to comb from end to root, and by the end of that conversation, we had a play date.
And by then you already knew what a play date was.
I knew what a play date was by then. And I went over to her house, and I combed her daughter's hair, and I braided it, and I showed her how to braid and comb her hair. So I say that there had to be some divine intervention there. I had that conversation with my friend. She told me, "Comb your daughter's hair and help track." And this woman who told me her family was that there was so much stress in her family home over combing her daughter's hair, actually found out how to comb her daughter's hair. So, building community, being neighborly. Plus, you look really great in bed. Thank you. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, so I've moved from health track and we're in the school. And there's this non-minorities as minorities. So our children live as minorities all the time in activity and Glenelg. But how is it when non-minorities become a minority? So I have 3 family situations where non-minorities were invited into our minority world. And it was quite different. It was different. So there was one situation where my son's friend, guy that lived down the street, he wanted to invite him to church. And it was Vacation Bible School. And this kid is one of these kids that is so active. I mean, just like he's busy, he's got something to do, he's talking, I need to be outside, I'm gonna throw this ball, you guys go outside, he's one of those kind of kids. Well, he got to the church, and he got in the Sunday school class. It was this, he was quiet, he's looking around, it was very strong, just now he's in my house, he's in the neighborhood, but when he became the minority in an organization that he was not accustomed to, it became very uncomfortable for him. And what age was that? That was about, I'd say 8 or 9, because they were definitely hanging out in their own Vacation Bible, study classroom, and it was separate from me. So I'm gonna say it was somewhere around 8 or 9 that happened. I hate to say he never came back to church with us again. I don't, there was nothing bad that happened to him, but I think there was a comfort level in coming to my home in the neighborhood, but he never came back to church. And he and my son are still friends. So I think they're just that way. The other one, my daughter's friend from our community, was invited to our home in Michigan. And that was for a weekend. So this is a long indoctrination. I didn't notice anything with her. I didn't notice any, but she got home and she told her mother, she said, "Mom, I'm the only white person there." The only time she would see another white person is if we went into town for ice cream or went to a shop. She really, and her mother comes to me and she said, my daughter said it was, that she didn't see any other white people, and that it was something to her that she needed to discuss with her mother. And she said, "I didn't understand it because we have all types of culture in my family, and we have interracial marriages in our family. So So I was surprised that this was a concern to her. And, I said, well, those minorities are invited into your family. So she's still in the comfort of her family. But when she's pulled outside of the comfort of her family, so this is someone that, I knew for a long, long time. And her mother felt comfortable with her sharing a weekend with us. I think she was probably around 12. She was on 12. So, yeah. So that one. And I think she actually came back. She came back. Yeah. Then the last one was I have here, my popularity for school events. And at that time, my daughter was a cheerleader at Glenmore South. And at that time, what the school districts what they were doing with IHSA is they were broadening with the basketball. Previously, it had been that only one school came out of Chicago to go to the downstate tournament in IHSA. And what they realized is that more schools from Chicago should have gone. Yeah, so what they started doing was broadening some of those playment pools so that schools from the suburbs actually started going into the city to play. Okay, and facing elimination within the city. So you may have 3, 4 schools from Chicago that would go to downstate to play. However it was. Well, anyway, our school was set to play at Marshall High School on the west side of Chicago. I'm just going to say it's a tough neighborhood. I know that neighborhood. I know it's tough. I know when I go, I'm on the top of my game. Like, don't leave anything in the back of your car. Make sure, where you, so I know it's a tough neighborhood. The people that I was always friendly with, at the school that wanted to go, I was, hey, how you doing, at the game? So we were friendly, we talked. All of a sudden, I'm the most popular person for a ride. Everyone wanted to ride with me. I had about 4 or 5 people calling me. Hey, Nancy, are you going to the game? Can we ride together? I mean, wait. So, do you think that, someone walking down the street is going to say, don't bother these 2 white ladies because they're with the black woman, so they're cool. Or that I'm going to jump on and save you. No, that's not going to happen. So there was once again a fear as a non-minority, someone in the majority, of being in a situation where you are a minority. So I will tell you, I did ride to the game. I think it just did help with their comfort level. So the reason I said this is consider what happens to children of color every day. Almost every classroom my child was in, they were the only black child, or maybe there was one other. When we first moved to our community in Glen Ellyn in 1989, we made it a point to talk to this one black family that had 2 children in high school, and we said, how many black kids are in your high school? I think they said about 5 or 10. And we were like, woo, that's kind of scary. So, and I think that does bring me to education here. Gosh, I got to forget education here. I have here in education, you are your child's best advocate. That's for every single family, but especially if you have a black or brown child, and especially a black or brown boy. Okay. The first thing I have here, now this is something that I did look up online. Black boys are more likely than any other group to be placed in special education, with 80% of all special education students being black and Hispanic male. So that's a 2015 number, information. Then the next one, black girls are 5 times more likely than white girls to be suspended at least once. They are viewed by educators as more suspicious, mature, provocative, and aggressive than their white people. My daughter, gosh, I reference my daughter a lot. She always says, yeah, we're sassy. We're sassy. And you see it on TV where you've got the little got a little black girl and she's sassy. So it pulls forward that stereotype of our children in school.
Do you feel that she's trying to reclaim the sassy image, or do you know yet?
No, she's not. My
Okay.
daughter's 26, so
Okay.
she has seen where people assume that you're sassy, you know, and you may not be. So it's something like it's put on you as a black female that you're sassy of some sort, or aggressive, more mature than white children that are your age. So I have here a school or school district may or may not be the solution to your problem. I believe, I know that a lot of us think, well, I'll get in the school district and my kid's gonna do just fine because we're in this great renowned school district. And that may or may not be true. The important ingredient is you. You have to be involved in it. Even if you are in this great renowned school. So I just have some general thoughts here on, preparing and advocating to you. Reading, understanding your own child's strengths and weaknesses. Have I been in situations where I felt in my great renowned school that my child was not, seen in the correct light? Absolutely. I think they're great schools, but there are times where I had to say, hey, I don't think that's appropriate for my child. And the only way you can do that is if you understand and know your child's strengths and weaknesses. Because believe me, when you go into a meeting with the teacher, they've got everything laid out there, so you have to understand. You have to be able to say, no, I read that book with my child, and I thought we got the concepts in there. So you have to do that. I say that your role is a friendly adversary. You're friends. You want to have a good relationship, but you want them to know that if things aren't right, you're going to push back on them. I'm going to push back on you. And I think especially as a family of color, you have to do that. You have to know what your child's strengths and weaknesses, and you have to be willing to push back if things aren't right with your kids. One of the things I always would say is, as soon as I went to the school, and I teach at COD. I felt like I had to say that. I had to exert that I understand the educational system. I am an educator. And sometimes I wonder, education is so important. Why is that important? Why do I have to do that? I put here some comments. These are some comments that my husband and I heard in black school. My husband, who is a very successful engineer, was told by his guidance counselor, engineering is a tough field. You probably won't make it. That was his guidance counselor. I was told by my guidance counselor at Supervisor Reed, it's all right to go to college to find a husband. And then there was, and I was also told, my father was told, why are you going to educate your daughter? She'll get married and stay at home. So there are things that are told, and if you don't, if you don't know how to respond, or if you don't know your child's strengths and weaknesses, if you don't understand, have cultural awareness, then it's gonna crumble. Your child will not be successful. At the time my husband was told that by his guidance counselor, he had already been accepted at Purdue, and he was graduating number 3 in his class. So, wow, why did that come up? Did my kids hear similar comments? Yes. Okay, I have discrimination here. It's in our society. It exists in every facet of our life. Some people ask, well, how do you handle discrimination? Or if you feel something needs to happen to you. It's a complex problem and there are complex solutions. There's no one size fits all. I don't immediately jump up and say one thing or do one thing if I think someone has done something to me. I think once again it goes back to social and cultural awareness, knowing who you are, knowing your history, knowing the history of other people. I have a lot of experience being a Black woman. I was born in 1960. You know, I grew up in a neighborhood that I saw change from in that blink of an eye, like flight, from one where my classroom was mixed in kindergarten to one where it was all Black in eighth grade. So I've seen it. You know, I've seen all of that too. So I let experience guide me on how I react. I didn't put here the race card. I think there's this thing of playing the race card. Should I play the race card? Should I say I'm discriminated against? Should I say that someone's actions are racist? I think that is such it's something you have to know how to use and how to do. I think people that always say it becomes something like the little boy that cried wolf. You know, if every time something happens to you, you use that as something. So there are times that in my heart I know that it is, but I move on from it. You know, so there are times. So it's not like I'm, you know, every time I call someone out on something. So it's something that you learn how to do, how to use. You know, when to walk away from a situation, you know, when to give a quick comment back, and you know when to fight for change in the system. So it's something that comes from being who you are, that you learn and develop how to use. Okay, last thing, man, I rushed us through because I know it's usually a 50-minute meeting. Family discussions, absolutely. We had family discussions about racism, discrimination. If I didn't, I wouldn't be a good Black parent, right? I have to, or I had to. My kids asked a number of times, hey, what do you think about this situation? This happened. No, hey, you didn't make the team because you weren't good enough to make the team, right? That could be it. Well, why is it? So that could be the case. Or, well, you know, maybe those parents are good friends. That could be the thing too. And they pick people who their friends are. That could be, you know. So your kids learn how to accept, you know, victory, defeat, and other things through that. So I don't want to give an excuse every time for something doesn't go their way. So we talk about those things. Have we had the discussion about driving while Black? Absolutely, we have. Okay, you know, what do you do when you get pulled over? How do you react? Have my friends been pulled over for driving while Black? Yes. Did anything bad happen? No. I heard the situation. They knew how to react. It did turn out okay. But we have had those instances. When I was a kid, caution in shopping. Know that you're the one that's going to be watched. You're walking in the store, they're watching you. Okay? And always ask for your bag and a receipt. Always ask for a bag and your receipt. So that you're not the one that's accused of doing something. So, yeah. That's, I think I got through it. Did I have a lot?
If you stop here, we can see those on Zoom.
Okay, stop here. Woo.
So
Okay.
we are going to have to, like in about 7 minutes, I'll have to end the Zoom.
Yeah.
But this conversation can continue for a little while longer. I hate to end it on Zoom, but maybe because there's some people on Zoom that have a question, or did you want to say a few more things?
No, I'm done. And I think I was trying to be full with everything. I think
So given our limit on Zoom, I don't know if Eric or Carolyn, or you have anything you want to say, or?
I hope I'm not echoing anymore.
No, you're good.
Oh, good. So I so appreciate you coming on and just sharing with us. And I just feel like I've learned so much, and it has let go of a layer of like fear or anxiety or trepidation about like stepping forward and wanting to know more and just being a better citizen to be real with no matter what color the person is. But it brought back memories to me that when I was going to college, I was at Fort Bragg. And so they had a college there, and it was Fayetteville State University. And so it was in the early 70s, it was a Black university. So it was really quite segregated. And I had to take all of my, and I'll be really quick, but I had to take all of my lab classes on the campus of the university. Otherwise, they were at the Army base. And I was always the only white person in those classes. And as a 20-year-old, because I was really young, that was an odd experience for me. And I can look back and say, if I had known more or been a little bit more aware, how would I have been? It was the only C I ever got in college, was in the one of the science classes I had to take. And it wasn't because of prejudice, but it did impact me because you always had to do all your lab stuff in pairs. And there was an odd number of students, and I never had a pair because there wasn't anybody to pair with. Because I'm so grateful for that experience. And I always felt like there was a level of jealousy, like these kids just know how to be with each other. And I don't have that experience as a white person in a white culture. It's sometimes really hard to be with another if you're a little bit different, which everybody who knows me knows that I am. So anyway, thank you so much. It's been just really great.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Eric, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you have anything you want to say.
I'm a little anxious because I'm screencasting this from my iPad to my television. I don't want to have a lot of feedback, but I think it's working. I also want to echo, I appreciate you being willing to come into our community and talk to us like this. I've been meeting with a group of white parents from my home church at Trinity over in Wheaton. And we've had a lot of discussion around, is it appropriate for us to go to Black people we know and say, what's it like for you? And teach us this or that about our relationship. It doesn't seem appropriate. It seems we've struggled with how do we find our own way into a less segregated and less racially stereotyped community, and also be aware of what it is that we do in our own lives that just sort of perpetuates our situation. I grew up on the edge of the Navajo reservation, and my father was the director of the Indian Health Service for the Navajos, and so we spent a lot of time on the reservation. So I do have that childhood experience a little bit of being the minority, and going into the Navajo homes and places where we were welcomed like family. But knowing that it wasn't quite my culture, and despite the fact that I was being brought up in it, I didn't really know how to behave. And so that's given me a lot of perspective, I guess. But I've been here in Glen Ellen almost as long as you have. I moved here in '91. And it's something that I worried about. I raised my older daughter here. She went to all the 12 years of school in District 41 and 87. And I was acutely aware of the fact that I had brought her into a wealthy white community, and that's all she knew. And so we spent a great deal of time trying to travel and get out of our community and talk about it. But it's certainly not the same as being in an integrated community. And I have a lot of appreciation for what it must have taken for you to live here with us. So anyway, thank you for this. It was nice, and my kids have been here listening, and I hope they've gained something from it too.
I know Kim Reed is there. I don't know if you want to add anything.
I just want to thank Nancy for coming and talking with us, and I hope that we can have more conversations like this at St. Mark's. And I just want to add that I work with Nancy on one community and George also, and this is the kind of stuff that we're talking about, and that we want to share more stories with our communities. anyway, it's nice to see everyone and thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
So I know we're gonna have, I think, you know, we can continue the conversation here, and I'm gonna have to work on some things for the next service, but I just want, Nancy, thank you so much for being here. And you know what, I think what Eric was saying about, you know, should we invite you to talk or not? You know, I mean, there's anxiety around that, and you may want to reflect on that, but I'm just grateful that you're here. I mean, I know you, and I'm like, well, of course you'll come.
Of course
You
you're
know,
gonna come.
of course you'll do.
But Nancy, I have anxiety about calling you because we don't have, our community does not have many, if any, people of color in it. And
One of our priests is from the Dominican Republic, so he's black and he speaks Spanish, so he's Hispanic black. And we have children who are black, just a few. You know, one is adopted, and we have others from families. But you know, it's not like we have a lot of African American presence in this community. We have a lot of people who speak Spanish. We have a service at 1 o'clock in Spanish, and so that's, you know, a big part of what our community is, and we're learning through that. And so, you know, there are so many questions, you know, I'm asking, like, you know, people are saying, well, why aren't there more African American people at St. Mark's, you know, and I think, you know, you've hinted that a little bit, you know. I mean, I don't think it's easy to come into a predominantly white church and just say, okay, I'm just going to come here, you know. I mean,
I also love why the church is such a center of, for us, our kids knowing, living with people that they expect and value, and it's so great that we can't just be, like you said, an entirely black organization that's successful and that's powerful. But the support of adults at church is really incredible for kids. And I just love that happens in the community, that we made that happen.
And, you know, my kids still, you know, maintain a number of those relationships, you know, friends and, you know,
by Zoom.
connections there.
So our law of diversity